All right, welcome back to another episode of It's Basically Monday. We're all here as usual, a second week in a row, might I add. That's some pretty good dedication, especially for our casual summer schedule. But yeah, I figured we'll do like a somewhat shorter episode today, just because we got such a late start. Mostly because of me, probably. Dude, I just slept really bad last night, like super bad. Like, I feel like I have it's this like weird thing that if I eat like too soon before I fall asleep, I might wake up with like a weird anxiety for no reason. Like I won't even know why I like have energy. It just makes no sense. So like I have to remember to like not like have any like a bunch of food or anything like within 2 hours before I sleep, otherwise that'll happen. But last night, I guess I just like got like tired earlier on accident, and so I ate and then fell asleep like pretty shortly afterwards. So like I woke up like an hour after that, and then like stayed up kind of like for an hour, and at this point it was like maybe 3 a.m., and then I finally fell back to sleep at nearly 4:30, and then I think I yeah ended up waking up again like at 7:30 or something. So like maybe like 4-ish hours of sleep I had last night. So then so then right before we started, I took a nap, and then didn't an accidental nap, might I add. And then yeah, so that kind of it's just the whole thing. Like once your sleep gets messed up, it just starts like a chain reaction of like more things, and then also more of your sleep getting messed up, I feel like. But I mean, at least I have energy now. So like if I didn't take that nap beforehand, I would be like Joe Biden basically like. But yeah, so how's it going, you guys?
We
Also,
haven't seen him in a while.
Joe Biden.
Yeah, like when was it actually the last time he was on camera?
Like like a few
That
days
debate.
ago,
At what?
he held a conference like trying to reinstate people's belief in his ability to finish the campaign.
All right, so it was like
Oh,
a town hall, or
Uh,
was it like a It was like a campaign rally stop.
no, it was just
yeah,
a
I think it
press
was a
conference.
rally.
It was just a press conference that he held.
It was a press conference specifically
Yeah,
to quell people's fears about his
to field question.
cognitive. Wow, that's
Yeah,
really something.
yeah.
Yeah, that is pretty crazy. So like, yeah, that happened. If you're listening in the year 2224, then the significant recent events of our world has been the assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life, literally grazing his ear just inches before hitting him in the head. And then the guy who shot at him like gets sniped, like headshotted immediately, like within seconds after shooting it. Like just a complete headshot. It's wild. Like it's like stuff you think you would never ever happen in your lifetime, and mainly
Hmm.
because like I guess we've grown up in a time of like relative like political stability for our whole lives. So like, it's like yeah, for me, I was like, no, it's never gonna happen. And same for my parents. Like my parents were never really telling me about any times of like political instability,
Wasn't
except for like maybe like
I
the
don't know.
year
I
they were
feel
born.
I was gonna say wasn't JFK shot during your parents' lifetime?
My parents were born in '65, so that was right before uh, all
Hmm,
that stuff, and that was like right around the civil rights movement too.
okay.
So I guess yeah, like I guess me particularly, like my parents got in there like right before or right after anything. So it's like, yeah, no one's telling me any stories of political craziness. I haven't seen any my whole life. And then like this like January 6th happens, where he tries to like kind of basically overthrow the government. Like he did. Like that is what like that's what did happen. Like and then like now somebody tried to assassinate Donald Trump. And then now, as of like what, yesterday,
Hmm.
Joe Biden just drops out of the race because he's just too old. Like it's just like he's obviously not the same person he was like 4 years ago, like clearly. So he had to drop out. And like at this point now we have like 5 weeks, or the Democrats have 5 weeks to pick someone to go up against him. So yeah,
I just want to
that's
back up just
complete
like
craziness.
a few steps and say that I feel like personally there's been some kind of huge controversy in every administration I've lived through except Obama, and that is also questionable depending on who you talk to.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Like there was
Like our whole
like is
childhood,
Clinton's controversy
our whole childhood, our
the
government was at war with a country that didn't even like do anything to us. We just assumed that Osama bin Laden was there.
Yeah, there
Osama
was
bin Laden?
Clinton,
That was
and
literally
then
our entire
Clinton
childhood.
with the whole fucking I don't know, I remember her name. That whole shit.
Monica Lewinsky.
Yeah, the Monica shit, and
Yeah,
then we go into Bush, and then there's the Al Gore Bush like contested election. Then there's everything that happened with Bush, and then we finally get to Obama, and then like I mean he did a lot of things behind the scene, but everyone was so rosy eyed and just like ignoring it all,
His
just being like, hey, look at his skin, it's okay,
yeah
he can do whatever he wants.
yeah.
yeah,
And
that drone
then
strike, drone strike.
and
His was
yeah,
yeah. His was drone strikes and Obamacare.
and then after that, we get Trump, pandemic, Biden. Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, it's I
Yeah.
feel like it's been mostly turmoil as far as I can remember. And even when Obama was president, like people were pissed just because he was president.
Yeah. People are
Interesting.
always
See,
pissed.
I don't remember like really anyone being pissed about Obama being president. Like
Oh, I do.
there definitely were. Like I'm learning that now, but like as far as like in Brown Deer and in Milwaukee, like everyone loved Obama. Like no one was saying anything bad about him like at all. Like there was nothing anyone could say. Like there was some things they could say, but like back then you couldn't. Like you could say Obama like yeah, Obama was like yeah, the Democrats' version of Trump. Like you could tell anyone that like he killed a baby or something, and they just either wouldn't believe it or would just be like, "Well, it doesn't matter. Like he's done too much for like the people and just like getting the first black man there and everything. Like it was just like, yeah, he was loved on that level, kind of in a way. And yeah, he didn't have any like big controversies. Like like I remember the stuff like when I would turn on the news and people were talking shit about him, it'd be like he wore the wrong pin to like like that event or something. Like that was like a major controversy, like that he like yeah had like the wrong dress code or something like that, and it was like a pin, or the pin was like a sideways or upside down or something. But now that would be nothing. Like a story about one of the presidents and their pin, I'd be like, how in the world did this get on the news and put in front of my face? Like, there's so many other like crazy stories that are going on right now, rather than yeah, whether the president's pin was sideways.
That's because
Yeah,
Obama did what was fashionable at the time. Like he started by saying like this is going to be the difference maker for minorities, and then he went in and then he started to like champion the LGBTQ community super hard for like a few years, and then he had Obamacare, and that was pretty much Everything he did, like that was Obama in a nutshell. It was yes we can or whatever the hell it was or hope or whatever the hell he was running on before. Yeah, there was really nothing to criticize because there was nothing that was done. So I mean, yeah, if you just
I mean,
like
that in itself could be something to
yeah,
criticize, I suppose.
yeah, but it's hard
But
to
at the
like
same
point out a
time,
specific thing because there really wasn't a whole lot of movement from anyone really in government during that time.
right. I mean, we were just recovering from like an economic recession,
Yeah,
the Great Recession, as they call it.
I also feel
20.
like his administration or his time in office was also kind of plagued by uh mass shootings. Like when I think of mass shootings and
yeah.
like that whole thing like starting up, like I think about Obama like talking about what was it? Sandy Hook.
Hmm.
That's when like I would say Sandy Hook is like that was like the bookend of all of this crazy shit happening. And it just kind of hasn't stopped ever since then. I guess you could go
I,
back to
I
9/11.
think a
I'm
lot of
talking about
that.
in my lifetime.
Yeah, yeah. I think I was gonna say. I think a lot of that has to do with how old we are, because around that time is when we start to care about adult things. So that's doesn't
Mm.
it makes sense that we associate that with the start of things being crazy. But like for someone who's 50, 60, I think they feel like things have been crazy for a long time.
I don't think so. I feel like I've heard people would say, even like them, that things are crazier now than like maybe not ever. 50, 60, yeah,
If
50,
you
60 is
if you
like the
think
cutoff because that's like the exact like
if
age
you
of my
think
parents.
if you think the world is crazier now than it was 60 years ago, I think you have a very strange concept of what crazy is. I feel like
Really?
you could not lit yeah, just by every statistical measure, the world is safer, more progressive, more like by every measure, the world is better than it was 60 years ago.
Yeah, it's better, but is it like any less crazy?
Yeah, but you said crazier, so that means one would have to believe that it's worse in some way,
Yeah.
measurably
Well, it's
worse.
crazy. Like
Okay. Yeah. Well,
crazy
then.
doesn't mean necessarily worse in itself. It just means like
So what
wild, like
does?
unpredictable. Like
No, I don't. I don't.
things
Yeah, I
could
don't
either
believe.
go amazing from here or they can go really terrible from here.
Yeah,
Like
I think that's literally always
and we
been the
really
case
just
in
don't
all
know.
of human history. I don't think that's any more true today than it was. Certainly not 60 years ago. I think it was even more so the case 60 years ago. Like, well, maybe I guess 60 years ago is what the 60s now. But yeah, even then, yeah, I think people felt that exact same way. I don't think you could convince what was going on in the 60s, the civil rights movement. I don't think you could convince people living through the civil rights movement that today's world is crazier for them than the 60s.
Yeah, that's probably like the last time things have been this crazy. But that was a long time ago, 60 years. But since then, like there has never been a time even close to this.
Yeah, see, again, I disagree. That I think the
Like what has happened since the civil rights movement
9/11.
that has been like, oh, okay, yeah, that was like what? How many years after this? That's like 50 years later. So like, yeah, you have 50 years of like nothing like too crazy happening to America. And then
2008,
9/11
the
is just
financial
like
recession, the dot-com
definitely
bubble, those
crazy.
were all very, very crazy times for anyone who lived through them.
The dot-com bubble, really, that wasn't
Yeah.
that crazy. Like
Okay.
that was
I don't
like
think we're in a
crazy
position.
for like
I don't think we're in a position to
yeah,
say
like it
that if we weren't
affected
adults.
dozens of people. Like ooh, like no, that's
Okay.
like no, like
It
it
doesn't.
was a bubble,
Okay.
but like you can't actually like say that like no
Yeah,
one thinks
yeah, I
that
can.
was a crazy time.
Oh,
Like
okay.
no one does. Like it was only crazy if you worked for one of these brand new .com companies.
Or if
In
you
which case,
had,
like who has done that?
or
Like
if you
I
had
have
any,
never known anyone,
or if you had
and we don't.
if you had any money invested in the financial markets at all, it was crazy for you. If you retired during that time, it was crazy for you. Are you kidding? Like, how can you say
What? So just because
the
that
whole
the
market
market
like
went
dropped in?
down, you would say that means it's crazy? So
If
I
you
guess yeah, I wouldn't consider just because
No,
the
no,
market goes down
I
it's
didn't say just
crazy.
because it went down. I said if you were someone who retired at that time. So like if your assets were in like were in the overall stock market, even if you weren't directly invested in those things, you still took a very serious financial hit, and you might have had to go back to work. Like that was a time where people did
Yeah,
not know.
I wouldn't say because you
Okay,
take a financial hit that means times are crazy. That's just
okay,
I feel like that's
I
just
guess that's,
natural.
isn't it though?
yeah,
Isn't that
okay.
like the whole?
Like
I would
crashes happen every
I,
like
we
12
we
years. It's
we
like
have
a
never
wave
we
of
have never
water.
lived through like our generation has not really lived through a significant financial crash when we've had to be adults and responsible for ourselves. So I would expect us to say that.
Yeah, we had the Great Recession. I just said it. It was so great. That's what they named it. It wasn't
Okay.
me.
Okay.
They named it that. The
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. Okay.
But even that, like, do you know anyone who lost their job during that? Like, personally?
During
Even
what?
secondhand.
Yeah.
You do, Gouda? Who was it?
Mm.
I don't want to say
Yeah.
it
Why
out
would it?
loud.
Why would he name them?
Well, what industry did they work in?
Tech.
Yeah. Fine.
Tech?
And finance for me.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I never heard of anyone connected to me in
So
that
wait.
field.
So your
The
basis
only
for
thing that I
whether
remember hearing happening,
so
yeah, I mean,
so you're
obviously my bases are going to be like off my personal experiences. Like, isn't that everyone's basis for everything?
maybe when you're like young, but like you know the world is bigger than your experience, so why would you limit it to your experience if you know that your experience is necessarily a very small part of the world?
I mean, if I were to try to like find the accurate statistics for every single bit of like the world, yes, that would just be impossible because
Well, I'm not asking you to know every
there aren't any
statistic
such
for the
things
whole
as like
world.
accurate statistics. Like we do know, of course, like how many jobs were lost
Yeah,
in the
that's what I
great recession.
mean. But
But
you
like I'm not gonna memorize that. Like I'm just gonna be like, okay, let me think back to that time. What was it like for me? I was an average American. So it's not outrageous for me to apply what my life was as
you
like just like a general like thing for anyone else's life.
you
I
bel
quite literally was an average American. Like I
during
don't
what
take that as like
time were we
diehard
talking?
truth.
What
My
time
whole
are we
life I
talking
still
about?
am. My whole life. And I still am. And I probably always
So you
maybe I'll probably always be an average American.
okay? So like I'll give you an example. For 2008, we were how old? 17, 18.
18.
Hmm.
You believe that your experience as a 17-year-old was indicative of the average American's experience in 2008?
Like the average like American.
That though that's what you said.
No, that's because I'm too young to like be the average American.
And
But
I
I'm
think
not.
that's
That's not
my
what I'm
point.
believing.
Well, that's my point.
I'm just
I'm talking
saying.
when you said that time wasn't crazy. We're talking about like 2000, for example. You said that
But like
time wasn't
I knew
crazy.
people who were older than me, who
R-
I would be like that, and it wasn't
Right.
crazy for them either.
Right,
And that's
but back
also
to
what
the
I'm thinking about
back to the
too.
point of like your experience being a limiting factor. I'm not even saying you have to know all statistics, but you could, like you said, you could just look up, and you didn't have to memorize it. You said you have to. I wouldn't memorize. Well, you don't have to. You tell me all the time. You could just you could ask Chat GPT that in like 2 seconds, and it would tell you how many jobs were lost over the course of like 5 years from 2000 to 2005. Like that would give you probably a more accurate picture than just saying, well, the people I knew who were older than me in 2000 said that didn't say anything crazy, so it must not have been crazy. Can we at least
I
agree?
would
Can we
kind
at
of
least
say
agree
that's
on that?
wrong. No, I don't think so. And that's because again, just like the dot-com bubble, like and I don't know like again, like I haven't done deep research in the amount and what sectors and what areas of the country it affected because that just like takes a lot of time. I don't do that for every single like little piece of history.
Does it
But
take a lot
like
of time?
yeah, I mean, I don't know it right now. Like do you know what sectors, how many jobs, all that stuff like
Well, I'm
just the
saying
fact
based
that
on
like you have
your.
to ask that, like that's like taking like minutes that I wouldn't normally just like suddenly start thinking, unless like we had a conversation just like this, and now I would have a reason to go look it up.
Well,
But
I'm not
like
saying you have to have a reason. I'm talking about
for
what a
instance,
lot of time is.
you
You
could
said
like the dot
minutes.
com bubble. Like again, I feel like that just wasn't a crazy time for America because like who really was affected? It could be like, oh yeah, thousands of jobs were lost, but they were all in
All right.
Silicon Valley.
So
Like the whole
all
thing was
right.
in that one county.
So
Like, oh, okay, well then like
since you don't
I
seem
wouldn't say
interested,
that
I'll look.
I wouldn't say if
We can just find out.
5,000 jobs were lost in one state or something would affect the daily lives of everyone. But like that's just a way a statistic would kind of skew like what reality is. So
Okay, so
like, is
is
it
there a
like a
number of
decent
jobs that
case
would have to be
strategy?
lost for you to consider it a crazy time?
I don't know. What would be like? I don't know. I know. Let's see, 200 people, so 0.5% of available jobs. I feel like
I'm just
yeah,
curious now.
yeah.
How much?
I'm just let's go with 1 in 200, so 0.5%. I feel like that's got to be pretty significant.
0.5%. One in two. 1 in 200. I guess I don't even know what number of jobs that would be.
0.5%,
Of like what the population was at the time.
or just however many jobs were available, or the population. Sure, but the whole population isn't working like that though.
Right. Well, so
Like,
then of jobs, I guess.
yeah.
2000.
And I'm saying 200 because I guess you gotta like estimate at any given time, or like
Yeah.
you just know of about 200 people. Like you might not be friends with them, but like you just know them. And maybe if they lost their job because of the current economic conditions, you
Mhm.
might hear about it like through
Yeah, I don't know.
like
I don't know if that would be true if
through
I was a child. For me, I mean, maybe it would have been for you, but I don't. If let's say 1 in 200, like you said, let's just use what you are telling us. If you know 200 people, but you don't even talk to all of them, how and you expect one out of every 200 of those people to tell you that they lost their job in order to know that something serious is happening, but you don't even talk to all 200 people consistently.
not personally, but I would hear about it through eventually the chain of someone. Like someone would tell so and so, and then they would tell them, and then eventually it would get to me. Like 200 out of everyone that I know, and especially back then,
Mhm.
that's not very far off. Like I like went to church. There's like
Okay.
hundreds of
So
people there.
let me tell you why I'm asking all of this because I'm having a hard time because I feel like you switch back and forth. Sometimes you'll say like what you just said, whereas like it's not that far off to say X, Y, and Z. But then I'll ask you like, well, how do we know that's relevant? You say, well, I don't know. There's really no way to know because who's gonna spend all that time looking it up? Okay, well, why not then just say we don't know? Why like I can
I'm
understand if
not
you're
saying that I do
no,
know.
no, no.
I'm
I
just
get that.
using, I'm just
I completely
explaining
get
what I
that.
use as my baseline logic. Like when I don't know something, this is
Yeah.
just what I just default to my own experiences,
Okay.
and I say, okay,
Fair.
well then that's
Fair
what I
enough.
consider to be true. But like I
Fair
don't
enough.
believe in it like with definity. Like no one could tell me like people lost jobs
Which
because
is,
I don't know anyone. Like
yeah,
I'm just saying, I don't know. I didn't see anyone lose jobs. Like
right. Yeah. That
I
just
haven't looked it
seems.
up.
This seems like a way to convince yourself that things are or are not true in a way that does not necessarily, or even in some cases, directly negates what the truth is. So I can understand why you might shortcut. I'm not saying that's a bad thing to do. I think we all do that in some regard. I'm just it's just interesting to hear about how you shortcut because like when to your own point like it's like well I don't know it could be the case. That's why I asked you, what would it take to convince you that that is the case? Because if you don't even have a measure of like what was true at the time, it's hard for me to understand how you could come up with a reasonable measure for it would take you to be convinced. Does that
Right.
make sense? I
Yeah,
don't know if I'm
it
saying
does.
that correctly,
I think it does
but
because
anyway, I did
yeah,
look it
like
up and there
I
was
base these things off of what I don't know. So then this is what I default my knowledge to.
okay.
So like just by the fact of like us having a conversation about
Yeah.
it, like if you guys were to tell me, well now you did. So now if I were to ever be asked that question again, like I would kind of consider like the fact that you told me this is like within my 200 people, although I'm only finding out 15
Yeah.
years later, I
Well,
guess,
well, then
14 years
the
later.
other part of that is I don't know. Like, I think your assumption that like you would hear about someone's layoffs as a child in 2000 might be a little bit like you have to know a lot about the 200 people that you're talking about in order to assume that you would hear that from them through any grapevine like that.
Like, I feel like a layoff is like easy to hear about because they usually follow up with like, oh, they're moving. And like that's usually a big deal that you would hear about. And like if there ever was like a layoff that would make it so you had to move or downsize your house, it was definitely that time. And like
Mm.
that was like part of the problem too, like the housing crisis. They're like giving out houses
So
to like
what if the
immigrants.
problem wasn't something that was a problem in your area, which again, small, right? Brown deer compared to everything else. But
Mm,
everywhere else it was a very large problem. But like if you use that basis, anything that does not hit brown deer, you would just be like, not really a big deal. Like, you know what I mean? Like
yeah, that's true.
you're like,
I mean,
yeah,
I would
you're
have
like,
to
yeah,
like
that's
do
yep.
research and find that out somehow. Like either
Yeah,
people would
okay.
have to tell me or I'd have to like look it up and find that out.
All right.
But
Well,
like
okay, so
yeah, I
this is
wouldn't
me
just be
telling
like,
you.
I don't know, and I'm not trying to know, and I would never even guess at it, even. It's
Okay.
like I wouldn't do that. Like, I
Okay.
have a guess, and it's just based off of my own life.
Yeah.
And for the
So
most part, it works. It does work pretty well.
okay. Well, I'm telling you that from my perspective, from where I lived, that was a very big deal. Even as a kid, that was for at least in my mind, that was a big deal. I remember 2008 being a very big deal. I remember 2001 being a very big deal, and that's just in the small vicinity that I had. So I'm not saying that again, same thing as you. Like I don't know how big the circle is, but when we look back and like big especially in like the financial world, because even if you don't have a job in finance, if you have any investable assets at all, that means you were impacted in some way in the 2000s, like majorly. And if you retire during any of those years, you were basically fucked. Like you had to make some real tough decisions about how you're about to live because you had just told everyone, "All right, I'm out," and then assume that you had said to yourself, "All right, things are great. My assets are going to last for X amount of years," and then that just gets cut in half. Like that means that you can't if you take off that exact same amount every year, you can only live like on that amount by like half the years. So obviously you're not going to continue to do that and just hope that it comes back cuz I know it sounds easy for us to say about like oh, recessions happen, like that's easy. Information was not like plentiful like that in 2000. People were not looking at financial markets like that. People panic all the time even with all of the information that we have. So like yeah, from my perspective, that was certainly a very daunting time for America. Because like when it doesn't seem like it now, but exact same time, the exact same way people talk about now, or the way you talk about right now, as being like this super troubling time. People say that I feel like every 4 years. People say the exact same thing when Trump first got elected. We might not even make it to another president, like what we did. Like and it happens every single year. There is some other thing that we're not gonna make it out of because America's about to die and like there's not saying any of those things aren't legitimate. They are, but all of those things in the moment seem way bigger to the people who have to endure them than the people that look back on them.
Interesting. Yeah, 2016 was 8 years ago.
Yeah,
I feel like at this point we could look back at it. It was almost 10 years ago.
yeah.
I would
And
still
it was
say that was pretty big
415,000 tech
compared
jobs
to
during that.
everything else.
Oof. It was
That was
415,000 tech
definitely
jobs
crazy.
during that. Well, I don't know if that's total
Yeah,
jobs,
just
but
all tech jobs. So
yeah,
like
those were. I don't know if it was, how many total, but oh,
it's just like
approximately 2 million people were laid off in 2000 in just 2001. So
in
that's
2001,
yeah, just that year.
2 million. So what is that of a population, the
Out of a
working
population of
population?
like I think it was 271 million at the time. So
Wait, in the United States alone, 2 million people for the dot-com bubble? Is that what you're talking about?
yeah, 2000 and yeah,
Wait, dot-com bubble, or was it like
yeah,
because of
during
like
the dot com
9/11,
bubble.
or like
No, during the dot com bubble.
like 2 million people in the United States? Yeah, I want to know like
Yeah, in
where.
2001.
Like it wasn't here, not in Wisconsin. Yeah, definitely not in Wisconsin.
But you see what I mean? Like 2 million out of 271 million is still less than 1% of the people who are probably
But
like,
I would say that's pretty close to
yeah,
actually what I would consider
it's a lot.
impactful. Well, I mean, as long as it's not in one single area. If it was all in California, like
No,
everyone who moved to California got laid off. Like okay,
no.
like no, that doesn't affect the average American. It just affects like a huge group
Yeah,
of people.
the Nasdaq fell from 5,048 to 1,179. Like that is a 70 or 80% drop. Like,
But the Nasdaq,
yeah. Well, obviously the Nasdaq's all tech.
yeah, like that's why
Yeah,
everyone was like, okay, get out of tech. Like tech's not what you should be in. So they just
yeah.
pulled all their money out. But that's not like the whole market. Yeah,
Um,
so that's basically all of California. So like California and like maybe like two skyscrapers worth of people in New York. No, I'm just kidding. Kind of. I mean, not really. Like, yeah, I kind of will stick to it. Like, if like my grandkids come and ask me like, what was it like during the dot-com bubble, and did me or anyone that I know were they actually affected by it? I'd be like, no. Like, my dad went to work every day. There was like plenty of people or plenty of work to be done. Like, I never remember hearing about layoffs during that time. Like, I no one at my church like had to get a new car or a different house or anything. Like I was just, it was fine. Like nothing happened. Like we heard about it on the news and we're like, damn, that's fucked up. And the market did go down. So it's like, yeah, I guess if you have like retirement money or like investment money in the market and you need to get out now,
no.
then like that's gonna kind of suck. But like otherwise, like no, that was literally no one.
2 million people, literally no one.
Yeah, I am interested to hear like where were these 2 million people because like
Yeah, I
okay,
don't.
wait, did you guys know anyone who like lost their job because of the dot-com bubble?
In 2000,
How
I
many
was
tech people do you just have
in
family in tech or something, Gouda? Like
in 2000, I was 9 years old.
Yeah,
So
I mean, yeah. I
I
mean, not family, but sorry.
no, go ahead, go
or
ahead.
friends or just anyone. Like yeah, it's not just
Yeah,
family.
like I knew a lot of, yeah, I knew like a lot of like family friends or like people that were within our like community that worked in tech that, yeah, like that really struggled and suffered and like you said, had to like move because like there were not jobs in that sector in this area anymore and they just had to like
In this
pick up
area,
and yeah, I
like
mean like
Wisconsin?
yeah, I mean like
Holy
Wisconsin,
shit.
I've only just recently, I would say like maybe in the last 50, like the last 20 years, it's become better for tech jobs. But before then, it was like, oh, are you going to the factory, Bill?
Bill.
It's like,
Yeah.
no. Oh, so then you're unemployed. So,
Yeah,
but like, yeah, just recently it's gotten to the point where it's like, it's more common for you to be working one of those like white collar tech jobs than it is like a blue collar
yeah.
manufacturing, something like you don't need an advanced degree to make a career out of it.
Spy XPX fell in half, basically, like 40 something percent. That's pretty decent.
Yeah, I mean like it sounds like a lot and it is. Like if you were to retire
It
in
sounds like a
2020,
lot. It's literally a
like
lot.
if you
It's
were planning
half.
on retiring like April of
Yeah.
2020, you'd be like, oh, I might as well kill myself. But like really all you had to do was just like wait like not like what like a year and then like it would go back. But 2020 was very different and very special and unique in its own way.
It was, yeah.
But even for the rest of the recessions, like they all pretty much recovered
Yeah.
within like
It's just
five
it's
years.
just so interesting to me that like you were 9. You were 9 in 2000. Like how can we even begin to have a reasonable assessment of what that is without looking those kind of things up? We were 9 years. Do you feel like you had a reasonable assessment of the rest of the world at 9?
I feel like yeah, I had like an ear to like a lot of drama that was going on.
Okay.
Like my mom was like an outlet. Like she came back home and repeated everything, like everything she would hear and learn about throughout the day. she came back home and told anyone who would listen. Like if anyone lost their job, anything happened to anyone, I feel like I heard about it. Like adults, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they did either. Like they could have been like cheating on their wife, like while doing cocaine up their butthole, and she would have still told me the story about it. She's like, "Yep, I heard so and so did this. It was wild," and I'd be like, "Damn." Like, okay. So like yeah, in that way I'm like, okay, I'm hearing about all these people like on a daily basis and like I never remember hearing about anyone losing their job around that time. So like up until this conversation where Gouda told me that he does know someone, especially around here, that lost their job, I would have answered like no, like I don't know anyone or even know of anyone who knows anyone that lost their job during the .com bubble. Like honestly, I'm still like I still have to like let it sink in that that was a thing and people did lose their jobs. The .com bubble, no. I think you're mistaken, but no, I'm just kidding.
Holy
But
shit.
yeah, still like I definitely don't
Like
remember that
how is
affecting
let
anyone.
me ask it a different way. How is what you're saying any different from someone denying things like Sandy Hook existed because it didn't happen around them?
Well, the moment I have this conversation, now like my views are altered forever. The people who are
Okay.
denying Sandy Hook, they like have talked about it, been shown the research, and there's like, nope, like, and that's not like where I'm at. Like that's like I default to my own experiences. Like if I don't
Uh,
know, it's like yeah, okay, then that's just what I take as the truth, I guess, until I'm proven otherwise. And then
okay.
now today, like I've been proven otherwise. Like I am connected to someone who lost their job in the .com bubble.
So what if it was you weren't connected to anyone? Like what if we said we personally did not know anyone who because again we were 9, but like here's the research. You can just go look this up. Like yeah, it's a pretty big thing. Would that be enough to convince you?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
If it was like again, if it wasn't like I actually am interested to see the research. Like where were these jobs? Like now I'm like, were there any like big like tech jobs in Wisconsin, like a big tech industry? Or did Gouda happen to know like one of like a dozen people in Wisconsin who worked in tech or something?
No,
No,
like
I'm kidding.
Johnson Controls, Rockwell Automation.
Oh yeah.
Okay, yeah, those are tech companies. Yeah, that's
Huh.
true. Rockwell. Yeah, the one guy who I knew who worked at Rockwell during that time didn't lose his job or anything bad. I think he even
Old
got promoted.
Rock.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's
Rockwell has a
doing
lot of
amazing at that point.
divisions and sectors, so maybe he.
Right, right. It could have been anything. And he was in sales, so like, I
Jesus.
don't know, whatever. But like, yeah, that's how tech companies do it though. Like, they might be losing like money, but like they're not like firing like they're not firing like the salespeople or anything. They're firing like all the people like on the manufacturing floor who like they don't need working at that time. It's like, yep, you're not needed and you're useless, so you're fired. So
No. Sorry, I
it's
didn't mean
usually
to
that.
derail. It's just very interesting, like to me, how it's always actually been interesting to me how people come up with their well, put it in your words, like default positions, or you call it like default truth. Because I personally have a very hard time doing that. Like I would, in your position, I would default to saying I have no idea. Because like that realization that you said of like I know my circle is I would not expect the averages to bore out towards me because even an average really is just a summation of everyone. So like what if like you said if it was all in like the California area or like the big city areas, then you might not ever hear about it if you're in a small town. Like Little Falls right now. Like if Mila said like I don't remember anything about COVID because no one in here talked about COVID at all.
Mhm.
Like dude, COVID was still gigantic even though no one
But I feel
here
like that's still
respected
an
COVID.
accurate representation of what life was like in the maybe not like I don't know what is that, the country, the suburbs? What are you in?
Yeah, well, yeah, small town. It was right. It was an actual accurate reflection of what life was like for her in a small town, for sure. But like for the world, like the example you asked of like your kids coming back to you and being like, "Hey, what was the world like at this time?" Like to give them your impression, which only reaches out spider webs out so far. For me, if I told Mila like, "Yeah, COVID wasn't that big of a deal," like I feel like that would be irresponsible of me because that's really not the truth. Even though it
Yeah.
it directly like is the truth for her,
Like
it
it
wouldn't be
wasn't a
true
big
for
deal.
every like it
You
would
could still
not.
say that. You could just say it
I
wasn't a
could.
big deal for me.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah, that is the way you said it. Was like, yeah, that wasn't really a big deal. Like when we first talked about it, you was like .com, like 12. You literally said like what, a dozen people lost their jobs.
Yeah,
I
dozens
was
were
like,
affected. Dozens.
dozens? Like the market fell in half. Holy shit.
Like, isn't like the very like definition of like calling a bubble bursting is the fact that a lot of people lose like a ton of like
Hmm.
assets or position or like
Yeah, in that bubble.
Yeah.
You don't have to be in it.
But that's the thing. Like it's not
well
called a
not
bubble until after it bursts and people have already lost everything. Then they're like, "Oh yeah, that was a bubble." But like no one's saying that when everyone's making money. They're not like, "Oh yeah, this bubble gonna be popping
What bubbles
soon."
have there been? I feel like there's been multiple bubbles.
Oh,
Like
for
there was
sure.
a crypto bubble like just in the last few years, like since 2020.
Big crip.
Do you guys know anyone who invested? Actually, I feel like
Yes.
I lost money in the crypto bubble. Did it affect my life? No, I didn't like put that much money in where it would affect my life. But like I did try and get in on it and it didn't work at all.
There was a guy who had made like upwards of like $1 million in Dogecoin, and he just kept it there forever. And then it just went straight back down to nothing. Like it was a huge story, and he was just like, they were like, why don't you take this out? Like this is life changing money. If he was like, nah, man, Doge. He just lost it
uh,
all.
he was like GME to the moon.
Yeah,
Like not
and like his
source
his
code.
his reasoning was like, because if we all just keep piling money into Doge, it'll go up.
Yeah,
And
I feel like that
yeah,
should be an example for everyone to learn from in investing. Like you have to get out eventually. Like
nah, man, it's all
you
about
can't
the
just
pump.
win forever.
It's all about the pump.
Pump, pump, pump. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, it depends. Like with crypto, yeah, you're definitely just selling it to the next person. But yeah, what a crazy world we live in. But I did not mean
Yeah.
to derail it to the point that you were making before. We were talking about the elections and how crazy. Because now, Miss Mrs. Is she a Mrs.
Oh
Mrs.
yeah. Kamala
Mrs.
Harris. Yep.
Kamala Harris.
Yeah. Mark my words. She can't win unless she picks Kendrick Lamar as her vice president. And if she did that, it would be over. Like, could you imagine him writing a
Uh,
diss track for the campaign? Donald Trump, like, it's over. Like, he would be destroyed. Like, Donald Trump would actually get destroyed. And it you could by Kendrick Lamar.
That
He'd
is
be
a
like, hey, Drake, I hate you because I'm young. But I hate you like I'm young.
shit.
You're not that good.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't
But
I don't think there's a reason like I only see one reasonable way for her to win, which is and it's the way that I for some reason I don't understand why no one else is talking about this. If Joe Biden dropped out of the race, like the problem I see the Democratic Party has, if Joe Biden dropped out of the race because he because he's senile, like let's just be honest, how is he still president? So
yeah,
like
I've heard that.
I don't understand how Kamala, who is still part of that administration, can now run saying, "Yeah, we supported Joe until we didn't because he's not fit, but he's still good to go for another 2 months." So like the only way I could see her winning is if, and this is one of those like 1 in 10 shots. The only way she could convince someone like me to vote for her is if she just went nuclear and just threw everyone in her current administration under the bus. and just said like, yeah, I've been trying to convince them for years to put him off to the side. I've basically been running things by myself. This is like that. That's the only way. You have to put all of them down underneath the bus and run them over several times, and that's the only way. Because then I'll be like, all right, well then maybe she's partially competent. Because if
Yeah,
you
that's
That would
cannot
make
sell, go ahead. No,
that
go
would
ahead.
make sense why her face like has always looked like that in all the press conferences. I noticed like since this announcement has been made, now she's only done one like public event that was today, but her face has all the like burden is gone.
Mm,
Like I can tell
she's
that
like
her face
happy
has,
now.
yeah, she has relief and like energy and hope. Like there's hope in her face.
mm.
Like before she looked like she
She
was a
looked like a
ghost.
disgruntled worker.
No, not even that. She looked like someone who goes to visit their dying loved one at the hospital every day after work. That's what she looked like. And now she looks like,
Damn, it was draining her soul, like
yeah,
her
Mhm.
yeah.
inside.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did. Like it did look like it drained her soul. But I feel like, yeah, that's what the vice presidency and the presidency will do to you.
Yeah.
Unless you're so evil that you can like close that part out.
Yeah, you definitely have to come out looking older than when you went in. Like that's just a prerequisite. But it is a long time either way. Oh, okay.
All right.
um.
Well, I feel like that's a pretty good place to end it. We
Uh,
still got some more interesting things to talk about, but I guess we can save it for next time. But yeah, we're already at like what 50 minutes, almost 45 minutes, so that's
yeah.
that's plenty for you. All right, guys, we're gonna close it up. Until next time, see ya.